Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Total War Warhammer Legendary Lord lore video. And it being October, I thought we would do Grimgor Ironhide. Little is known of where Grimgor originates from. What is known is that Grimgor staggered out of the blasted wastes with a grizzled, bloody, and much scarred bodyguard. The few survivors were all tired and hungry, but they were also all Black Orcs, and all armed to the teeth. They had clearly seen much combat, and some of the blood and wounds they bore were fresh. Grimgor and his lads soon set upon the greenskins of the World Edge Mountains, and they easily took over the first tribe they met, conquering the second and annihilating the third. There was never enough killing for Grimgor. They proceeded to take over one greenskin tribe after another, quickly establishing themselves as the dominant force in the region. What they lacked in numbers, they more than made up for with single-minded brutality. Tribes that fought well, like the Skull Splitters, were allowed to limp off, but most, like the goblin-dominated Bone Pickers or Red Spears, were smashed aside or annihilated. Only once did a foolish orc inquire as to where Grimgor and his lads came from. His body was swiftly added to a ditch of Grimgor's victims. Funny enough, after that incident, he was rarely, if ever, asked again. Soon, the most formidable tribes along both sides of the northern World Edge Mountains were either following Grimgor or had fallen before his blood-spattered axe. Even for a Black Orc, Grimgor's thirst for battle was exceptional. If he was out of the fighting for a day, he starts bloody arguments, his one good eye leering out of a mass of scars to find fault with those around him. 2 days without a battle, and Grimgor would smite anything he could reach, save perhaps his fellow Black Orcs. No one knows for sure what would happen if 3 days without a battle ever occurred, but even hardened veterans tremble just to think of it. He seeks nothing less than eternal battle. For an orc, this marks him out as a leader, and as a huge Black Orc with a following of more of the same, this marks him out for greatness. Within a month of arriving, he had carved himself a small empire in the northern edge of the World's Edge Mountains, always seeking battle, seldom seeking followers, though many greenskins flock to his banner. On the whole, Grimgor much prefers Black Orcs to any other kind of greenskin, but plenty of weedier types have snuck into his camp when the steely gaze of his single eye is fixed elsewhere. So long as things are going well, which means there are lots of things to fight against, at best Grimgor will tolerate the company of orcs and goblins, at least as long as they stay out of his sight. However, when Grimgor runs drive opponents to chop into offal, the many tag-along tribes drifting in his wake are liable to end up on the wrong side of Grimgor's frustration and his magical axe, Gitsnik. At times like these, the smarter tribes tend to keep well away from Grimgor's camp for a while. When he can, Grimgor marches out early, before any of the ragtag hordes can assemble and follow, yet inevitably they catch up, as his trail of blood-soaked devastation is all too easy to follow. Within a month of his arrival in the World's Edge Mountains, Grimgor had hacked himself a sizable realm. Before a year had passed, he struck out at the dwarves of Karakadrin. They were the first of their kin to feel his wrath, and he struck them with insane furiosity. Those he did not kill, he captured and tortured, plucking their beards out hair by hair, or heating their armor until they baked alive. He never tried to take the hugely fortified hold itself, content to butcher those that were sent against him, until the dwarves despaired of their loss and settled down behind their defenses to wait out the approaching winter. But Grimgor would not wait, and went north once more, down Peak Pass into Kislev, to find fresh victims there. When he marched into Kislev, Grimgor found to his dismay that even a dozen of their best champions could barely make him break a sweat. Though the Kislevites are valiant fighters and well used to the icy grip of winter, the viciousness with which Grimgor attacked sent their forces reeling. 3 armies were sent to stop him, and he slaughtered them all in turn, feasting on the fallen. Then, as he approached Kislev itself, blizzards, sent by the desperate Ice Queen of that land, halted Grimgor's reign of terror on the steppes. Without warning, the army was wrapped in a freezing cloak of whirling ice, stinging the eyes, scouring the flesh, and confusing the senses. The goblins whined and the orcs thrashed them forward, but the way was unclear. All landmarks were lost in the swirling maze of whiteness, and after blundering around in a confused rage, Grimgor halted the army to sit it out. It was as well that there were many hundreds of goblins with the host, as the glowering Black Orc slew every goblin he could find in his rage and frustration at being halted, even wading chest deep into high snowbanks to chop at any little runts that were hiding. Soon the orc shamans began to talk of sorcery, and that the storm was unnatural. Another day went past, and Grimgor ordered the army back towards the mountains. Traveling this way, the storm seemed to abate, but each time they turned again to march once more on Kislev, the winds whipped up and pelted them with ice. In a towering rage, Grimgor returned to the World's Edge Mountains. His anger was so palpable, even his bodyguard kept their distance. As it happens, it was the Skaven of Clan Moors that fell foul of his wrath. Grimgor had finally decided to find a base from which to strike out, and the ancient dwarf hold of Caragungor seemed just the place to start. The night goblins of Red Eye Mountain, what the Greenskins used to refer to Caragungor, were followers of Grimgor, at least when he didn't leave them behind, or wade into their midst swinging his axe, and the few that weren't his followers soon learned from their mistake. Awed by his incandescent anger, the bravest of the night goblins dare approach Grimgor, and led him to the depths beneath their mountainous lair. It was in the deepest tunnels that Grimgor found his real enemy, and fell upon the unsuspecting Skaven of Clan Moors. Soon, the old tunnels rang to the sounds of battle. Month after month the battles raged, thousands of Skaven and Greenskins dying for each room, each corridor. Time and time again, Grimgor would think the Skaven destroyed, just to stumble on a secret passage hiding yet more of the vermin. With no map, and both the night goblins and Skaven adding to their already labyrinthine passageways, this was just what he was looking for, a battle that never ended. However, after a time, Grimgor grew bored of slaughtering the Skaven, and retired to the upper levels in the spring. And so it would be, in the spring, Grimgor would lead his followers into Kislev, or the Empire, slaughtering all those who would stand before him. In the winter he retreats to his stronghold in the remains of Caragungor, and there would spend his time murdering the Skaven that infest its lower levels. Since establishing his home stomping grounds amongst the northern peaks of the World's Edge Mountains, Grimgor has found time to butcher his way through many other territories. Stunties encased in their nigh impenetrable armor were hacked apart with ease. Vampire lords from Sylvania were broken, and their fangs strung onto long ropes to bedeck Grimgor's banners. By the end of one winter, Grimgor grew bored as he was wont to do, and once again headed out to seek a worthy challenge. This time, Grimgor's quest took him to the north, for he had heard that in those lands the men and beasts were fierce. The first to suffer were the Skaven. He stumbled upon the lair of Hell Pit, the lair of Frot the Unclean. For a while, this proved satisfying, as Grimgor slaughtered grotesque multi-headed beasts and warpstone-addled monsters. When the master mutators ran out of creatures, Grimgor grew disinterested, and seeing no value in capturing such a loathsome and disgusting-smelling stronghold, he headed north again. When the Black Orc war boss and his legions at last marched out, the Skaven Hellpit were down to their last line of defenders, many of which were already standing in puddles of their own muskfear. It wasn't long after that Grimgor and his followers began meeting the wandering northern tribesmen, the followers of the Dark Gods. These proved disappointing in battle, at least at first, until larger and more heavily armored forces began seeking out the green demon that was stalking the wastes. But even these harder armies were soon destroyed. In his wake, Grimgor left piled mounds of hacked-apart chaos armor, like empty bones or shells, tossed away after a feast. A feeling as unwelcome as non-stop goblin jabber talk had been growing in Grimgor's black heart. What if nothing that walked, or crawled, or flew could put up a good enough fight? And then finally, At the foot of High Pass, Grimgor found his equal in battle. Here, the army of Krom the Conqueror met the horde of Grimgor. The battle lasted from sunrise to sunset, the blood of the two forces staining the snow and mud crimson. Grimgor and Krom hacked their way through the press to face each other and fight in single combat. Whilst the two battled out their personal rivalry, Krom's army overwhelmed the Greenskins, driving them back to the High Pass. Grimgor and Krom traded blows and parries for many hours, neither willing to back down. Eventually, as darkness fell, Krom relented and stood back, allowing Grimgor to see the remnants of his army fleeing to the west. Surrounded on all sides by Chaos tribesmen, Grimgor had to back down. He was fought to a standstill by the champion of Chaos. If the combat had been allowed to continue, Grimgor felt sure he would have prevailed. But despite that, even Grimgor knew he could not stand alone against an entire Chaos army. Although it galled him to back down, this setback, a drawn-out combat, only further stoked Grimgor's lust for battle. It is not so much that Grimgor leads a war. It is more that Grimgor himself is a war. A physical manifestation of the pure will of Gork. He is an unstoppable killing machine. It is only natural that other greenskins are attracted, like sharks drawn to blood. They want to join the slaughter that is sure to follow wherever Grimgor goes. Grimgor, for his part, always travels with a hardened core of Black Orcs. They have been with him through thick and thin, and now form his bodyguard. Grimgor maintains this tough, elite retinue of Black Orc warriors around him. This hard-as-nails mob, known as the Immortals, a moniker earned due to the habit of surviving almost impossible battles. Although rumors are abound that they tend to go recruiting after a fight with a bit more fervor than usual. This veteran bodyguard has seen many battles alongside Grimgor, and they enjoy their grisly work. And so it is that on Red Eye Mountain, Grimgor makes his home for the winter, before venturing out into the wider Warhammer world to ply his trade of slaughter and battle. To quote Grimgor, "I'm gonna stomp 'em to dust. I'm gonna grind their bones. I'm gonna burn down their towns and cities. I'm gonna pile 'em up in a big fire and roast 'em. I'm gonna bash heads, break faces, and jump up and down on the bits that's left. And then, I'm gonna get really mean." And that about sums it up for Grimgor, a Black Orc steeped in mystery, although we can guess at his origins and where he came from, and the circumstances which brought him to the World's Edge Mountains and the lands of the Empire. On the tabletop, he had a few magic items. Gitsnik, this formidable axe, came from the forges of the Chaos Dwarves of Zarn the Grand, and despite constant use has never grown dull. Large and blood-spattered, the axe, whose name simply means foe killer, has many charms and pouches chained to its haft. These contain powerful sorceries woven by mighty orc shamans that enable Grimgor to wield Gitsnik with blurring speed. On the tabletop, this would give Grimgor +2 strength. The rule always strikes first, and it was counted as a magical weapon. He also had his blood-forged armor, which after being forged was quenched in the blood of dwarven rune priests. Now bullied, scarred, and twisted, just like its wearer, the blood-forged armor has served Grimgor well in many battles. This would give him a +1 to his armor saves and a 5+ ward save, so 33% ward save. And he used to have an item called Mork's All-Seeing Eye, and this was a small but potent artifact that used to bang from Grimgor's armor, the spoils of a victorious headbutting contest with Mork himself, as Grimgor used to claim. Through this talisman, Mork watches over Grimgor and protects him from enemy spells. This would give him and his bodyguard a magic resistance, but I think after around 6th edition, he never had this item anymore, and it was just the blood-forged armor and Gitsnik. And that is the tale of Grimgor, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, a huge thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you all on the next one. Alright guys, bye.